Close your eyes and breathe slowly. Let the air fill your lungs, and then release it, feeling the tension leave your shoulders. Forget the world of the 21st century. Forget the constant hum of machines, the blue light of screens, and the frantic pace of modern life. We are traveling back, deep into the shadows of the past, to the year 1587. You are standing on the deck of a wooden sailing ship named the Lion. Underneath your feet, the massive oak timber feels solid yet alive, groaning and creaking as it settles into the rhythm of the Atlantic Ocean. The air around you is thick and heavy with the scent of salt spray, old rope, and the weathered wood of the hull. Around you, there is nothing but the infinite blue of the sea, a vast and terrifying desert of water that stretches thousands of miles in every direction. You are one of the 115 souls who have left everything behind. The crowded streets of London, the familiar smell of coal smoke, and the safety of the known world, to find a new life in a place called Roanoke. The sun is beginning to set, painting the sky in deep shades of bruised purple, burning orange, and fading gold. The massive white sails above you snap and flutter in the wind like the wings of a giant tired bird. You watch the horizon, where the dark blue of the water meets the pale light of the sky, and you realize that you have been at sea for weeks. Time has lost its meaning. There are no clocks here, only the rising and setting of the sun and the steady, hypnotic pulse of the waves hitting the ship. Thump wash, thump wash. It is the heartbeat of the ocean, a sound that has followed you across the world. Most of the other passengers have gone below deck. They are huddled in the darkness, dreaming of green fields, stable houses, and the firm feeling of earth beneath their feet. But you stay on the deck, watching the first stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. They are brighter than you have ever seen them, thousands of diamonds scattered across a velvet cloth. As the ship moves forward, mile after mile, the wind begins to carry a different scent. It is not just salt anymore. Occasionally, you catch a faint, ghostly smell of damp earth, pine needles, and wild forest. Land is out there, somewhere in the darkness, waiting. But it is not a land of cities and roads. It is a land of shadows and ancient mysteries. You think about the word frontier. It means the edge of the world. You are standing on that edge, looking into a void that has swallowed others before you. You remember the stories whispered by the sailors in the dead of night. Stories of the first men who tried to stay on Roanoke, of how they vanished, leaving behind nothing but empty buildings and a sense of dread. But you push those thoughts away. You have to. You are part of a colony of families. There are men here planning to build workshops, women planning to plant gardens, and children who will be the first of their kind to grow up in this new world. 115 hearts, beating together in the middle of a dark, indifferent ocean. The moon rises higher, casting a pale silver light over the foam of the waves. The ship feels small, a tiny splinter of wood in an endless universe of water. You listen to the rhythmic creaking of the masts. It is a lonely sound, but also a comforting one. It tells you the ship is holding together. It tells you that you are moving. Every hour takes you further from the world you knew and closer to the silence that will eventually define your story. You imagine the island of Roanoke as it must look right now in the moonlight. You imagine the tall trees, the thick vines, and the quiet beaches where the only footsteps are those of the deer or the local tribes who watch the sea with suspicion. You are heading toward a mysterious fate, but for now, there is only the wind, the sea, and the stars. Your mind becomes heavy, your thoughts slowing down to match the movement of the tide. The journey is long, but there is no hurry. There's only the infinite horizon. The days on the ship continue to blur into a single, long experience of motion. You watch the sailors climb the rigging, their shadows moving like spiders against the orange glow of the morning. You hear the splash of the lead line as they check the depth of the water, hoping to find the shallow sands of the coast. Every time the cry of no bottom comes back, a small sigh of disappointment ripples through the deck. But then, the water begins to change color. The deep, dark indigo turns into a lighter, sandy green. The waves become shorter and more frequent. The air becomes warmer, more humid, and filled with the sound of distant birds. You see a piece of driftwood floating past, a branch from a tree that must have grown on a shore you cannot yet see. It is a sign. Life is near. Finally, through the morning mist, land emerges. It is not a solid wall of earth, but a low, dark line off.
And the birds, thousands of them, rising in clouds as the ship approaches. The anchor is dropped with a massive splash and the sound of heavy iron chains rattling through the hawse holes. The sound echoes across the water, breaking a silence that feels like it has existed for 1,000 years. You have arrived. But as you look at the dense green wall of the island, you realize that the silence is not gone. It has simply moved. It is waiting for you in the trees. It is waiting for you to step onto the sand and become part of the mystery. As the small wooden boats are lowered into the water, the sound of the pulleys is a sharp, rhythmic screech that cuts through the humid air. You climb down the rope ladder, your hands feeling the rough, salty texture of the hemp. When your boots finally touch the wet sand of Roanoke Island, a strange sensation washes over you. After months of the ship's constant swaying, the earth feels unnervingly still. It is a heavy, solid silence that seems to rise from the ground itself. You stand on the shore, the water gently lapping at your feet, and look at the forest. It is a wall of ancient green, massive oaks, towering pines, and tangled cedar trees that have stood here since the beginning of time. The air is different here. It is thick with the smell of damp earth, decaying leaves, and a sweet, unknown wildflower that grows somewhere deep in the shadows. You and the other settlers begin to move inland, toward the site of the previous settlement. Every step you take through the high grass feels like an intrusion. The insects hum in a low, vibrating drone that fills your ears, a sound that never stops, day or night. As you reach the clearing where the first soldiers had built their barracks, the silence changes. It becomes heavier. The buildings are still there, but they are skeletons of what they once were. The thatched roofs have caved in, reclaimed by the weight of the rain and the wind. The wooden walls are covered in thick, dark green moss that looks like velvet in the dim light. There is no sign of the men who were left here to guard this place. No tools, no weapons, no bones, just the empty, hollow spaces where lives used to be. The sun begins to climb higher, but the light that filters through the canopy of the forest is gray and filtered, as if the trees are protecting the secrets of the island. You begin the work of rebuilding. The sound of axes hitting wood begins to echo through the clearing. Thwack, thwack, thwack. It is a lonely sound. In London, the sound of an axe would be lost in the noise of the city, but here it feels like a signal. You wonder who is listening. You look into the dark gaps between the trees, where the shadows are so deep they look like solid objects. You know the local tribes are there. You feel their eyes, a constant, invisible pressure against your skin. They are part of this silence, a people who know the language of the wind and the trees, while you are a stranger trying to speak a language the land does not yet understand. Days turn into weeks, and the labor is endless. Your hands become calloused and stained with the dark soil of the new world. You spend hours digging wells, hoping to find water that doesn't taste of the salt of the sea. You plant seeds, wheat, corn, and peas, into the stubborn earth, praying that the island will allow them to grow. Every evening, as the shadows lengthen and the forest begins to breathe its cool, misty breath, the colony gathers in the center of the clearing. The fire is small, a tiny orange spark in the middle of a vast black universe. You sit in silence, listening to the sounds of the night. The owls hooting from the high branches, the rustle of some unseen animal in the undergrowth, and the constant eternal sighing of the wind in the pines. It is a beautiful place, but it is a beauty that feels cold and indifferent to your survival. By August, the heat is a physical weight. The humidity hangs over the settlement like a wet blanket, making every movement a struggle. But amidst the exhaustion, there is a moment of light. Virginia Dare is born. You hear her first cry, a thin, sharp sound that pierces through the heavy afternoon air. For a moment, the silence of the island is broken by something familiar and human. She is the first of a new generation, a child of the wilderness. You look at her small, fragile hands and you wonder what kind of world she will grow up in. Will she ever see the stone streets of England? Or will her ears only ever know the sound of the Atlantic waves and the whispering oaks of Roanoke? Her birth brings a flicker of hope, but it also brings a new sharp edge to the fear. You are no longer just fighting for your own lives. You are fighting for a future that feels as thin and fragile as a spider's web. John White, the governor and the grandfather of the child, walks the perimeter of the fort every night. You see his silhouette against the moonlight, a man carrying the weight of 115 souls on his shoulders. The supplies are vanishing faster than anyone expected. The salted beef is turning rancid in the heat. The flour is filled with weevils. The realization begins to sink in, slow and cold. If help does not come from England, the colony will not survive the winter. The forest is beautiful, but it is not a grocery store. It is a maze of hunger. White makes the difficult decision to sail back to England. He does not want to leave, but the colony begs him. They need tools, they need grain, they need the connection to the world they left behind. On the morning of his departure, the air is unnaturally still. Not a single leaf moves on the trees. The water in the bay is like a dark mirror reflecting the gray clouds above. You stand on the beach with the others, watching the sailors prepare the small boats. White speaks to the group one last time. His voice is steady, but you can see the pain in his eyes. He tells you that if you must leave this place before he returns, you must carve your destination into a tree or a doorpost. And if there is trouble, if you are forced to leave by force, you must carve a cross above the name. You nod, but the words feel like a prophecy of something dark. You watch him climb into the boat. You watch the oars hit the water. You watch the ship spread its white sails and move slowly, painfully away from the shore. You stand there until the ship is nothing more than a tiny speck on the horizon, and then you are left with the silence. A silence that is now absolute. The departure of the ship leaves a void that no amount of work can fill. For the first few days, you find yourself constantly glancing at the eastern horizon, half expecting to see the white sails returning, as if the whole thing were a mistake. But the horizon remains a hard, flat line of blue. The silence of the island begins to seep into the very walls of the houses you have built. It is no longer just the absence of sound, it is a presence a weight that sits on your chest when you wake up in the middle of the night. You begin to notice things you never saw before. The way the shadows of the pine trees stretch across the clearing like long, thin fingers as the sun goes down. The way the mist rolls in from the swamps thick and white, swallowing the fort until you can barely see your own hand in front of your face. Autumn arrives, but it is not the gentle autumn of the English countryside. Here, the air becomes heavy and damp, smelling of ancient rot and salt. The vibrant greens of the forest start to transform into a chaotic display of deep reds, dying oranges, and brittle browns. The wind changes its tune. It no longer whispers. It begins to moan through the gaps in the timber walls. You spend your days reinforcing the shelters, stuffing dried grass and mud into the cracks to keep out the biting chill. Every time the wind rises, the whole settlement seems to shiver. You listen to the sound of the Atlantic crashing against the outer banks, a distant low roar that reminds you of how small this island truly is. You are a tiny wooden island of humanity in a sea of indifferent wilderness. Food is the shadow that follows everyone. The garden you planted with such hope is struggling. The soil of Roanoke is sandy and unpredictable, and the insects have taken their share. You learn to hunt, but the forest is a labyrinth. You walk beneath the canopy of giant oaks where the light is always dim, even at noon. Every snapped twig under your boot sounds like a gunshot in the stillness. You see the deer, quick and ghostly, vanishing into the brush before you can even raise your bow. You start to look at the plants differently, wondering which berry is a gift and which is a poison. Hunger is a slow, quiet companion. It doesn't scream, it just makes the world feel a little colder, your limbs a little heavier, and your dreams a little more vivid. In the evenings, the colony huddles closer to the fires. There is less talking now. People have run out of stories about London or the lives they left behind. Those memories are fading, becoming as gray as the winter sky. Instead, you listen to the island. You hear the owls calling to each other across the clearing, their voices sounding strangely like human names. You hear the scratching of small animals against the wood of the barracks. Sometimes in the deepest part of the night, you hear a sound that you cannot explain, a rhythmic drumming or a distant chant that seems to come from the very heart of the forest. Is it the Croatoan people, or is it just the island itself, breathing in its sleep? You look at the others, their faces carved with exhaustion and a growing silent fear, and you realize that you are all becoming part of the landscape. Your skin is darkening, your clothes are fraying, and your eyes are starting to reflect the wildness of the trees. The first frost arrives in November, turning the world into a landscape of silver and glass. The birds that filled the air in the summer have flown south, leaving behind a sky that is vast and empty. The silence is now absolute. You find yourself standing by the main gate of the fort, staring at the wooden post where John White told you to carve your secret message if you ever had to leave. It is smooth and blank, a silent witness to your presence. You think about the word Croatoan. It feels like a spell, a key to a door you haven't opened yet. You wonder about the island to the south, the home of the people who have watched you from the shadows. Are they warm? Do they have fires that never go out? Do they know the secrets of this land that you are so desperately trying to learn? Winter is a time of ghosts. Inside the small houses, the air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and unwashed bodies. You spend hours staring into the embers of the fire, watching the orange light dance on the walls. In these moments, the line between reality and dream begins to blur. You imagine you hear the sound of church bells or the laughter of a friend from a life 1,000 miles away. But then a log pops in the fireplace and you are back in Roanoke, in the dark, in the cold. You look at Virginia Dare, wrapped in furs, sleeping peacefully. She is the only one who isn't afraid, because she doesn't know any other world. To her, this island is the center of the universe. To the rest of you, it is a beautiful, terrifying mystery that is slowly closing its hand around you. As the weeks of winter drag on, the isolation becomes a physical force. You realize that you are the only English voices for thousands of miles. If you vanished tomorrow, who would know? The forest would grow over your houses in a few years. The vines would swallow the fort. The sand would cover your footsteps on the beach. This thought doesn't bring panic anymore. It brings a strange, quiet peace. You are no longer fighting the island. You are surrendering to it. You are learning to move with the shadows, to breathe with the wind, and to accept the silence as your new language. The colony is changing. It is no longer an English settlement. It is something else, something new, something that belongs to the new world. The month of January brings a silence that is different from the others. It is a frozen silence. The swamps surrounding the settlement are covered in a thin gray sheet of ice that cracks like glass under the weight of the winter birds. The mud in the clearing has turned into iron, cold, and unforgiving. Inside the fort, the air is so still that you can hear the heartbeat of the person sitting next to you. Every breath you take creates a small cloud of silver mist that lingers in the air for a moment before vanishing into the shadows. You spend days without speaking. There is nothing left to say. The stories of England have been told 1,000 times, and the reality of Roanoke is too heavy for words. You have become watchers. You watch the gray sky for a break in the clouds. You watch the edge of the forest for a movement that isn't the wind. You watch the flickering candles until they burn down to nothing but a memory of light. Hunger has changed the way you see the world. It sharpens the senses while it weakens the body. You notice the texture of the bark on the oak trees, the deep, jagged lines that look like ancient maps. You notice the way the light changes as the sun moves behind the clouds, casting long, pale shadows that dance across the frozen ground. The hunger makes your dreams more vivid than your waking life. You dream of heavy tables filled with bread, roast meats, and sweet ales. But when you wake up, there is only the cold smell of wood smoke and the hollow ache in your stomach. You begin to look at the island not as a place to be conquered, but as a living entity. You realize that the forest is not empty. It is full of life that knows how to survive this winter. You see the squirrels hiding nuts deep within the hollows of the trees. You see the owls hunting in the moonlight with perfect silent precision. You realize that you are the only ones who do not belong here yet. You are still trying to live by the rules of a world that is 3,000 miles away. The turning point comes in February during a night of a great storm. The wind screams across the Atlantic, hitting the island with a force that feels personal. The massive pines bend until they look like they will snap, and the sound of the ocean is a continuous, deafening roar that drowns out everything else. Inside the small wooden houses, you huddle together for warmth. You feel the walls vibrating, the timber groaning under the pressure of the gale. In that darkness, as the wind howls through the chimney, a realization begins to spread through the colony like a slow-burning fire. John White is not coming back. Not this winter. Perhaps not ever. The ocean that brought you here has now become your prison. The hope that you held on to like a lucky charm has finally withered. But in the place of hope, something else grows. A cold, hard determination to survive at any cost. When the storm passes, the world is transformed. Huge trees have fallen in the forest, their massive roots pulled from the earth like broken teeth. The beach has been reshaped by the waves, the sand piled into high, strange dunes. The colony gathers in the center of the fort. You look at each other, and for the first time in months, you see a new light in everyone's eyes. It is the light of a decision made in the dark. You cannot stay here and wait for a ghost ship. To stay is to become part of the soil. To leave is to have a chance at a future. The talk of moving south toward Croatoan begins as a whisper and grows into a steady plan. The Croatoan people have survived here for thousands of years. They know where the water is sweet. They know which roots can be eaten. They know the secrets of the seasons. Moving toward them is not an act of defeat. It is an act of becoming. It is the moment the English settlers decide to become people of the New World. The preparation for the departure is a long, slow process that takes weeks. You do not leave in a hurry. You move with the deliberate pace of people who are leaving their past behind for good. You begin to dismantle the things you no longer need. You bury the heavy iron tools deep in the sandy soil, perhaps as a gift for the earth, or perhaps as a hidden treasure for a future that will never find them. You sort through your belongings, choosing only what can be carried on your backs or in the small boats. You look at the books, the fine clothes, and the maps of Europe, and you realize they are useless here. You leave them behind in the empty houses where the dust will eventually cover them like a shroud. You are shedding your old skin, layer by layer, until only the essentials remain: your tools for survival, your weapons, and each other. On the final night, the settlement feels like a graveyard of memories. The houses stand empty, their doors open to the wind. You walk through the quiet streets, listening to the echo of your own footsteps. You remember the day you arrived, the excitement, the fear, and the sound of Virginia Dare's first cry. Now she is walking, her small feet finding their way across the rough ground. She is the anchor that pulls you forward. You find the wooden post at the entrance of the fort. It is a massive piece of oak, weathered by the salt and the sun. A man steps forward with a chisel. He doesn't look back at the houses. He focuses only on the wood. He begins to carve, the sound of the metal hitting the timber a rhythmic steady beat. C, R, O, A, T, O, A, N. The letters are deep and permanent. There is no cross carved above them. There is no sign of a struggle. There is only the word, a bridge between the life you had and the life you are about to begin. As the sun begins to rise on the day of the journey, a thick mist rolls in from the sea, wrapping the island in a white, soft blanket. You move toward the boats in silence, 115 people, moving like shadows through the fog. You do not look back at the fort. You look ahead, toward the water and the trees. You step into the boats, the wood cool and damp beneath your hands. The oars dip into the water with a soft, hollow splash. As you pull away from the shore, the island of Roanoke begins to fade into the mist. The houses, the fort, and the empty streets disappear, becoming part of the forest once again. You are moving into the silence. You are moving into the mystery. You are no longer the lost colony. You are a people of the wind and the waves, heading toward a new horizon that has no name. The journey south is not a journey of speed, but a journey of endurance. The boats move slowly through the shallow, murky waters of the Sound, hugging the coastline of the mainland. The sky above is a flat, heavy gray, and the water below is so dark it looks like ink. Every time the oars dip into the water, they create small, swirling whirlpools that vanish as quickly as they appear. You sit in the middle of the boat, feeling the damp cold of the mist settling on your skin. You look at the people around you. Their faces are calm, but it is a calm born of total exhaustion. There is no more room for panic. There is only the rhythm of the breathing and the steady splash of the water. You are moving through a world that feels half-formed, a landscape of water and reeds where the line between the earth and the sky is blurred by the fog. As you move further from Roanoke, the familiar shapes of the fort and the houses become distant memories. You start to notice the changing personality of the coastline. The dense oak forests begin to give way to vast, open marshes, where the tall grass whispers in the wind like 1,000 dry voices. You see white herons standing perfectly still in the shallows, their long necks curved like elegant statues. They watch you pass with their ancient, unblinking eyes, as if they have seen 1,000 colonies come and go. You realize that you are entering a territory that has its own rules, its own history, and its own ghosts. The silence here is different. It is wider, more open, and filled with the lonely cries of the gulls that circle overhead in the gray light of the afternoon. Nightfall on the water is a slow immersion into darkness. You do not stop. You cannot. The fear of being caught in the open water without a landmark keeps the oars moving. You light a single small lantern in the lead boat, its tiny orange flame flickering against the vast blackness of the Sound. It is the only light for miles. Around you, the water begins to glow with a strange phosphorescent light, every movement of the boat leaving a trail of ghostly silver fire in its wake. You watch the stars, but they are often hidden by the clouds, leaving you with only your instincts and the sound of the waves hitting the shore. You feel as though you are floating in the center of a dream, moving toward a destination that exists more in your mind than on a map. By the third day, the hunger has become a silent hum in your ears. You chew on small pieces of dried fish and drink the brackish water, but your body is running on the energy of the spirit rather than the meat. You reach the northern tip of the island of the Croatoan. The trees here are shorter, twisted by the constant salt winds of the Atlantic, their branches leaning permanently toward the west. You see smoke rising in the distance, a thin blue ribbon of wood smoke that looks like a prayer against the gray sky. It is a sign of life. It is the first time in years that you have felt a sense of arrival. But as the boats approach the shore, you feel a new kind of hesitation. You are no longer the masters of this world. You are the guests. You are the survivors seeking a home in a land that belongs to others. The landing is quiet. There is no shouting, no celebration. You step onto the soft white sand of the new island, feeling the strength of the earth returning to your legs. The Croatoan people are waiting. They do not come forward with weapons, nor do they come with songs. They stand at the edge of the trees, a group of figures wrapped in furs, their dark eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. They have been watching you since the day you left Roanoke. They know your hunger. They know your silence. One of their elders steps forward, his face a map of 100 winters. He looks at Virginia Dare, who is being held in her mother's tired arms, and he reaches out a hand, touching the air near the child's face. It is a gesture of recognition. In that moment, the language of England and the language of the New World find a common ground. The first few weeks on the island of the Croatoan are a blur of heat, smoke, and the smell of roasting corn. You are taught how to build shelters that breathe with the wind, using the reeds from the marshes and the bark from the cedar trees. You learn how to find the hidden springs of fresh water beneath the sandy soil. You learn the names of the stars in a new way, connecting them to the cycles of the deer and the movement of the fish. You realize that the mystery of Roanoke was never about vanishing. It was about changing. The people of the lost colony are not gone. They are melting into the island. They are becoming the shadows in the forest, the voices in the wind, and the ancestors of a new kind of people who will one day walk this land without fear. As you lie down to sleep on your first real bed of firs and cedar boughs, you listen to the sound of the ocean. It is the same Atlantic that brought you here, but it sounds different now. It no longer sounds like a barrier. It sounds like a song. The silence of the night is full of life. You think of John White, still sailing somewhere in the dark, looking for a ghost that no longer exists. You wish you could tell him that there is no need to worry. You are not lost. You have simply found a different way to be found. The night is deep, the fire is low, and for the first time in a long time, the silence is a friend. Sleep now, N.S.P., and let the story of the lost colony become the peace of your own rest. The years on Croatoan Island do not pass like the years in England. There are no church bells to mark the hours, no calendars to mark the months. Instead, time is measured by the migration of the birds and the changing color of the marsh grass. You have learned to live in the present moment, a skill the island teaches through its absolute indifference to the past. The English clothes you brought with you have long since fallen apart, replaced by the soft, durable skins of the deer and the woven fibers of the local plants. Your skin has been seasoned by the salt air and darkened by the summer sun until you look more like the trees you live among than the people you once were. Even the language is changing. English words are softening, blending with the sounds of the island, the rush of the water, the snap of a branch, the low hum of the evening insects. You speak less, but you understand more. Winter on Croatoan is a season of stories and smoke. Inside the long curved houses built of cedar and mats, the air is warm and smells of dried herbs and wood fire. You sit in the semi-darkness, watching the elders of the Croatoan tribe. They tell stories that are thousands of years old, stories about the Great Spirit, the movements of the stars, and the origins of the wind. You realize that these stories are the maps of this world. They don't tell you where to go, they tell you how to be. You look at the children of the colony, Virginia Dare and the others, who sit with the Croatoan children. To them, there is no difference. They share the same games, the same food, and the same dreams. The blood of England and the spirit of the New World are mixing, creating something entirely new, something that the maps of the Old World could never contain. Sometimes during the long gray afternoons of February, you walk alone on the beach, looking north toward Roanoke. The memory of the fort and the empty houses feels like a dream from a different life. You wonder if the houses are still standing, or if the forest has finally swallowed them whole. You wonder if the word you carved on the post, Croatoan, is still there, or if the salt air has smoothed the wood back into silence. This thought doesn't bring you sadness anymore. It brings a sense of completion. You are not lost. You are simply where you are supposed to be. The mystery that will trouble the minds of historians for centuries is, to you, just the simple reality of survival. You chose life over the ghost of a colony, and the island rewarded you with a peace that the Old World never offered. Spring returns to the island with a sudden, violent burst of life. The marshes turn a vibrant electric green, and the air is filled with the scent of wild strawberries and blossoming vines. The fish return to the sounds in numbers that defy belief. Thousands of silver bodies moving through the water like a single massive organism. You spend your days in the small boats, no longer as desperate strangers, but as people who know the rhythm of the tides. You know where the oysters hide in the mud and where the crabs gather in the shallows. You have learned the patience of the heron and the focus of the hawk. The island has become your teacher, your provider, and your home. The fear that once sat on your chest has vanished, replaced by a deep, quiet connection to the earth beneath your feet. But there is always a part of you that watches the horizon, not because you want to leave, but because you know that one day the world you left behind will come looking for you. You imagine the ships with their white sails coming back to find a colony that is no longer there. You imagine John White standing on the shore of Roanoke, calling out into the silence. You wish you could tell him that the silence isn't an ending, it is a beginning. You wish you could tell him that the colony didn't die, it changed its shape. It became the wind in the pines, the foam on the waves, and the stories told around the fires of Croatoan. You have vanished into the land, and in doing so, you have become eternal. As the sun begins to set over the marshes, casting long purple shadows across the water, you feel a deep sense of stillness. The work of the day is done. The fires are being lit in the village, their smoke rising in thin blue ribbons toward the darkening sky. You listen to the sound of the Atlantic, a constant low roar that reminds you of the heartbeat of the world. You are part of this rhythm now. You are part of the mystery. The night is coming, cool and silent, and you are ready for its rest. Sleep now, N.S. Bay, and let the echoes of Roanoke fade into the peaceful darkness of the present. The story continues, but for now there is only the silence of the island and the steady pulse of the sea. A decade has passed, though on Croatoan the years are not numbers, but cycles of the moon and the return of the monarch butterflies. You find yourself sitting on a fallen cedar log watching Virginia dare. She is no longer the crying infant from the ship. She's a young woman of the forest. Her hair, once the pale color of English wheat, has been darkened by the sun and is braided with small blue shells and turkey feathers. She speaks the language of the Croatoan as naturally as the wind moves through the reeds. When she speaks English, the words sound like ancient music, slow and deliberate, as if she is reaching into a treasure chest of forgotten things. To her, the old world is a ghost story told by the elders, a place of stone cathedrals and crowded streets that seems impossible in this land of endless green. She is the living bridge between two worlds, a person who belongs to no map, only to the island. The transformation of the colony is now nearly complete. The English names, White, Dare, Stevens, Cooper, have begun to soften into the phonetic rhythms of the island. You notice that the settlers no longer dream of London. Their dreams are now filled with the patterns of the tides, the migration of the shad, and the scent of wood smoke on a winter morning. The material things you brought across the ocean have mostly returned to the earth. The iron pots have rusted away, replaced by beautiful hand-coiled clay vessels fired in the village pits. The wool and linen have been traded for the softness of buckskin and the warmth of raccoon fur. You realize that wealth is no longer measured by gold or land deeds, but by the strength of your hands and the depth of your knowledge of the forest. To know which root can heal a fever or which wood burns the longest in a storm is the only true currency here. The silence of the island has become your greatest teacher. You have learned that the forest is never truly quiet. It is just waiting for you to listen. You can now distinguish between the sound of the wind in the pines and the wind in the oaks. You know the difference between the rustle of a squirrel and the careful, silent footstep of a hunter. This heightened awareness has changed your very soul. You no longer feel the need to fill the air with empty words. You can sit with a friend for hours, watching the sunset over the sound, and feel a perfect, complete connection without saying a single thing. The frantic anxiety of the first year in Roanoke feels like a fever that has finally broken. You are no longer fighting the wilderness. You are breathing with it. You have found a peace that is as deep and as ancient as the roots of the trees. But sometimes in the late autumn, when the air is crisp and the sky is a sharp, painful blue, a strange feeling ripples through the village, a sense of a world far away. You find yourself walking to the highest dune on the eastern shore of Croatoan, looking out over the Atlantic. The ocean is a vast, shimmering mirror of light. Somewhere 3,000 miles to the east, there are cities, wars, and kings. There are people who still think of you as lost. They imagine you starving in the woods or captured by enemies. They write your story with tragedy and mystery. You look at your hands, strong and steady, and you look at the vibrant, living village behind you. You realize the irony of your situation. The world thinks you are lost, but you are the only ones who have truly been found. You have escaped the cage of history and stepped into the freedom of the eternal present. One evening, as the moon rises large and orange over the water, an elder of the Croatoan sits beside you. He points to the stars, the same stars that guided your ship so many years ago. He tells you that the stars are the campfires of the ancestors, watching over the world. You look at the constellation of the Great Bear and you think of the maps John White used to study in the candlelight. Those maps are gone, lost in the rot of the Roanoke fort. But the stars remain. They are the only maps you need now. You realize that home is not a place you find. It is a place you create with your own spirit. Roanoke was a dream of the past, but Croatoan is the reality of the future. You are the ancestors now. You are the ones who will be remembered in the whispers of the wind and the shadows of the forest. The night is deep and the air is cool. The sound of the waves hitting the shore is a steady, rhythmic lullaby that has the power to erase all worries. You feel the weight of your body sinking into the furs, the warmth of the fire still lingering in your bones. The mystery of the lost colony is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a life to be lived. You are the living proof that even when everything is taken away, your country, your language, your history, something essential remains. The spirit of survival, the capacity for change, and the beauty of the silence. As you drift toward sleep, let the image of the island wrap around you like a soft, dark blanket. There is no more need for questions. There is only the breath, the wind, and the sea. The year is 1607. 20 years have passed since the 115 souls watched the sails of John White disappear into the Atlantic mist. Far to the north, a new group of ships has arrived at a place they call Jamestown. These men are different. They carry the same heavy steel, the same rigid maps, and the same desperate hunger for gold and empire that you once carried. They hear rumors in the wind. They hear stories from the neighboring tribes about a people who live on an island to the south. People who live in houses built of stone and wood. People who have skin that is not quite of this land and eyes that remember the color of the European sea. They hear of a young woman with hair the color of sun-dried grass. They call these stories the legend of the lost colony. They do not realize that you are not lost. They are simply unable to see you through the eyes of the old world. To the men of Jamestown, the wilderness is an enemy to be conquered, a wall of green that must be pushed back. They send search parties into the woods, their heavy boots trampling the delicate moss and their loud voices breaking the sacred silence of the forest. They look for ruins. They look for the iron pots and the leather-bound books. They look for the things that remain, not realizing that the true legacy of Roanoke is not in the things that stayed the same, but in the things that changed. They find the site of the old fort on Roanoke Island. By now, the forest has completely reclaimed its own. The wooden palisades have rotted into the soil, feeding the roots of new oaks. The houses have collapsed under the weight of 20 winters, their timbers now home to the beetles and the small silent lizards. The vines of the Scuppernong grapes have wrapped around the remnants of the chimneys, hiding the brickwork beneath a curtain of thick green leaves. One of the explorers, a man with tired eyes and a heart full of shadows, stands before the ancient oak tree where the word was carved. The wood has grown, the bark thickening and stretching the letters until they are almost unrecognizable. C-R-O-O-T-O-A-N. He runs his fingers over the grooves, feeling the ghost of the man who carved them so long ago. He looks for the cross, the sign of distress. He finds nothing but the smooth gray bark. He stands there for a long time, the silence of Roanoke pressing against his ears. He feels a presence in the trees, a sense of being watched by 1,000 eyes that belong to the island itself. He does not understand that the colony is still here, in the very air he breathes, in the shape of the leaves, and in the blood of the people who now call this land their mother. While they search for you with maps and compasses, you are living a life that no map could ever describe. On Croatoan, the village has become a place of perfect balance. You watch as the second generation of children is born, Children who have never heard the word England except as a sound in a bedtime story. They do not know what a city is. They do not know what a king is. To them, power is the movement of the tide, and wealth is the abundance of the autumn harvest. You watch Virginia Dare lead the young women to the marshes to gather the sweet grass for weaving. She moves with a grace that is both human and animal, her feet finding the path through the mud without a single sound. She is no longer an English girl. She is the spirit of the island made flesh. The searchers from the north eventually give up. They return to their stone houses and their crowded forts, writing letters back to London about the tragedy of the vanished colony. They create a mystery because they cannot accept the simplicity of the truth. They cannot imagine that English citizens would choose to shed their old lives and become one with the wilderness. They need a story of ghosts and shadows because the reality of your survival is a threat to their own vision of the world. And so the mystery grows. It becomes a campfire story, a puzzle for the centuries, a hole in the fabric of history that no one can fill. But you know the truth. You know it every time you taste the salt in the morning air. You know it every time you hear the laughter of the children in the village. You know it every time you sit by the fire and feel the deep, unshakable peace of a soul that has found its true home. The silence of Roanoke was not a grave. It was a sanctuary. It was the space where the old self died so that a new self could be born. As you drift toward sleep, imagine the searchers walking away, their footsteps fading into the distance. Let the silence return to the island. Let the mist cover the paths and the trees. You are safe. You are hidden. You are part of the eternal mystery of the land. The centuries move across the island of Roanoke like the shadows of clouds moving over the water. 100 years pass, then 200, then 3. The wooden houses of the Croatoan village eventually return to the earth, just as the English barracks did before them. The people, your descendants, carry your eyes and your resilience into the future, blending into the tapestry of the new world until the lines between where one story ends and another begins are completely gone. The forest grows taller, the oaks becoming massive giants that hold the memories of the colony in their rings. The sand dunes shift, covering and uncovering the secrets you left behind. A rusted nail, a fragment of a clay pot, a blue bead from a child's necklace. These items sleep beneath the soil, waiting for a time that will never come. Now imagine the world of today. The busy cities, the bright lights, and the endless noise are miles away from the shore. Here, on the edges of Roanoke and the Outer Banks, the silence is still the master. If you stand on the beach at midnight with the cool Atlantic water washing over your feet, you can still feel the presence of the 115. They are not ghosts in the way the storybooks say. They are not haunting the woods with sorrow. They are the peace of the island itself. They are the rhythmic pulse of the waves that never stop. They are the steady, unblinking stars that watched over the ship in 1587 and still watch over you tonight. History looks for answers in books and ruins, but the true answer is in the air. The lost colony was never lost. They were found by the land. They learned that to survive is to change, and to change is to become eternal. The mystery of the word Croatoan is no longer a puzzle to be solved. It is a lullaby. It is a word that means survival. It is a word that means home. It is a word that tells you that even when the world forgets your name, the earth remembers your breath. You are part of that continuity now. By listening to this story, you have walked the same sand and felt the same wind. You have shared the silence of the forest and the vastness of the sea. The night is now absolute. The fire has burned down to a soft orange glow, and the shadows have become a part of the darkness. Your breathing is slow and steady, perfectly in time with the distant roar of the ocean. There are no more questions to answer. There are no more journeys to take. The journey of Roanoke has reached its end, and so has yours. The island is at rest. The trees are still. The water is a dark, peaceful mirror reflecting the infinite universe. You are safe in the arms of the past, protected by the silence that has lasted for 400 years. As you drift into the deepest part of your sleep, let the image of the white sails fade away. Let the sound of the axes in the woods become a distant memory. There is only the cool night air, the soft furs of your bed, and the knowledge that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. They are the spaces where we find our peace. They are the shadows where we find our rest. The story of Roanoke is now your own dream. It is a story of a journey that never ended because it became the land itself.